Just Baseball Show, Monday, March 3rd. Aram Layton got a live look at Roki Sasaki, and he wants to tell you about that live look that resulted in the Kyle Teal homer, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys saw. But I know he also got a couple of Ks in that one. It was a sequence of live ABs against the White Sox. But Aram was there. He will tell you all about it as we gear up for Roki Sasaki's Cactus League debut, which comes tomorrow against the Reds. And I think you can watch that on MLB Network. I saw a note about some guys expanding their arsenals, and I understand it for some. I really don't understand it for others, and I want to expand on that. And then we've got our season preview of the American League West. We're going to go through all five teams in the AL West, and we're going to give you their overall strengths, overall weaknesses, and at the end, we will do a predicted order of finish in 2025. As always, we are brought to you by the fine folks at BetMGM. Before we get any further, Walker Buehler was awesome in
Yeah.
his Grapefruit League debut. Buehler, 25 pitches in two scoreless innings. Only hit that he allowed was a double off the wall in center to Jeff McNeil as the first hitter that he saw. He K'd four. He did not walk anyone. The crappy part about this is there was no StatCast data publicly available. I don't know why JetBlue doesn't have that, but I was working off the telecast, and he said Tom Karen and Lou Merlone were saying that he was 93, 94. He topped at 95 with his four seamer. Everything looked good. And I know we're going to have a ton of bias saying, like, oh, Bueller's back. It's great. It's awesome. That can actually be one of the most underrated signings of
Oh
the
yeah.
offseason, if he's right.
Oh yeah. I mean, you don't even have to have a bias or anything like that to see it that way. And I think you're already seeing that sentiment being shared on social by Red Sox fans or AL East foes, fans of those teams as well. I'm really excited to see the Statcast data because the one thing I did, at least it looked like from the broadcast and what I was able to see, is it looked like he was throwing that cutter a lot more, and I think that was something that really ended up becoming a big part of his success. I know he's talked about it a little bit, but a big part of his success at the end of last year and through the postseason because if it's not going to be 98, 99 all the time at the top like he was doing in the past, he's still such a freaking good pitcher that you can adjust with what you've got. It looked like he had the sinker running arm side, and then he had the cutter running the other way. So having that east west, and then off of the cutter, you saw that bigger breaking ball. He got Canario on one that was like in the other's batter's box, but he kind of had him already leaning out there because the cutter was a shorter, harder version of that. So it seems like, and you knew this was going to happen, right? Walker just needed another offseason, especially with the success he had at the end of the year, to continue to refine this new Walker Buehler after the second surgery. And you're seeing that different arsenal. You still see the same Walker in there, but executing different things slightly differently, as a lot of the best pitchers of all time have done to increase their longevity, right? As they age and, it happened a little bit quicker for Walker because
Yeah.
two major surgeries, but to see him be able to kind of adjust and look like this slightly altered version that can still be dominant at the major league level is really exciting.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about what that rotation can look like because we know what he can do in a big game. But by the end of the season, assuming full health, you have a frontline starter in Garrett Crochet. You have a top 10 arm in Major League Baseball. Don't forget Tanner Houck was an all-star last year. So you
Yeah.
got Houck and you got Bueller as the two and three. And then you have depth arms galore after that. And Bayo is a four that you've extended, and Bayo can be a ground ball beast when he's right. And then you piece it together. Does Quinn Priester take that five spot? I mean, Cutter Crawford is dealing with, I think, an injury right now. He's going to miss a month or so, but he'll be back. Is Richard Fitz the guy that's going to grab that five spot? It's an open competition, at least from the outside looking in, for that five starter role. And man, like so much of the conversation around the Boston Red Sox has been about the lineup, and we have pounded those points home. And I don't need to rehash the lineup again because we know how deep that lineup is and how necessary a move is probably once they added Bregman. But dude, if that rotation matches the lineup and what we think that lineup can do, why can't this team win the American League East?
Well, did you mention Giolito?
I didn't mention Giolito, so there you go. You probably have a set five, and then you've got Priester and Fitz as like depth arms here.
Exactly. And I think that's the most exciting part is you don't need Lucas Giolito to be a three or a two When that was the case, it was like, oh, okay, I don't know how I feel about this. You need Lucas Giolito to be a four, and you're in a pretty good spot. And you're hoping with what the Red Sox have been able to do recently with pitching development that Giolito's another guy that can kind of optimize that arsenal a little bit. But the depth is totally different as well. I totally agree with what you're saying, where you might even get a Patrick Sandoval back at the end of the year if you need
Mhm.
him, because it was internal brace last June, so he should be able to potentially get back. But yeah, with Cutter right there as well, and then as you mentioned, Priester, who I still think is another guy that's going to get more out of his stuff as he continues to make those tweaks in this Red Sox organization as well. I mean, I think they're going to become a very popular pick as we get closer to the season to potentially win that division. As every other team, they're all solid, for the most part, but they've all got some flaws. So
Yeah.
I think you can look at the Red Sox and say, if that pitching, if you believe in it, and it's volatile, but if you believe in it, Crochet could win the Cy Young. Like, this is absolutely a team that can be right up there with the Yankees and the Orioles and the Rays.
Yep. Let's talk about Walker Buehler's former employer because they signed Roki Sasaki on the IFA market, and Roki Sasaki threw live ABs to the Chicago White Sox. And the viral clip was the Kyle Teal homer, but I didn't see any national media coverage of anything else other than the
No,
Teal homer, and the Teal homer came from you, and it came from the White Sox as well. Like, it, it was a really unique thing to open up Instagram and see the White Sox co-post with Kyle Teal, him hitting a homer off Roki Sasaki. I was like, "Whoa, here we
yeah.
go." What were your main takeaways from that Sasaki live ABs that you got?
Well, and it was White Sox prospects too, which was the craziest part. So not even any of the big league guys, I don't think. It was interesting because I don't think a lot of people knew about it. I think that was intentional because if they had like announced, hey, Roki Sasaki throwing live ABs, in the backfields here, it would have been a zoo. It wasn't really. So I was able to kind of get right behind home plate, and I just wanted to see how everything was moving. You could 100% see, the Roki Sasaki that we've talked about and seen,
Sure.
but it also does still look like he's early in the process of kind of getting ready to go. And I'm very interested to see what it's going to look like in the spring training debut as well, because the splitter was as advertised. He was throwing some disgusting splits, and that pitch, it just seems like he can roll out of bed and throw it. But the breaking ball, and I know it's a different feel with the MLB ball, he kept missing arm side with that, and he just couldn't seem to quite find that pitch too consistently. And then the only thing that really stood out to me as a concern was the fastball not having that same amount of life. I think he got like one whiff. I didn't have like an exact tally. Definitely was not more than two whiffs on the fastball, and he threw 3 innings almost. He didn't finish the third, but they did two up downs, and he started the third, and then after he walked, I forget who the hitter was that he walked. Mark Pryor was like, okay, that's enough, and they shut that down. Was starting to miss arm side more and more. It's an adjustment period for him, but I think it was a good reminder from what I was able to see of like, hey, he's 23, he's making a big leap. Most pitchers that make this leap over have another 2 years of professional pitching
Yeah.
under their belt, whether it be an NPB or KBO. And I know you're still making that leap to Major League Baseball, but you have 2 more years of learning yourself as a professional and as a pitcher. So he's making this leap, I think, a lot earlier than most other pitchers would in their baseball life. And I do think it's important to temper expectations a little bit and expect him to kind of ease in, but it's kind of hard to do that given all of the hype around him. All I'll say is like the stuff's going to be really impressive. The splitter is really good, but like that's a fastball that if he's not executing and the breaking ball's not there, like it's not going to be a just get off to a hot start and dominate type of start to his career. And I don't want to take too much from one appearance, but
Right.
I do think it's important to like realize that this may be a slower role than we think and like a slower acclimation process for him.
It sounds like it validated some of your concerns. And concern is a word that we're stretching a little bit because it's not like the fastball shape stinks, and it's not like the fastball characteristics overall are terrible. Like it's still what, 96, 97 in Japan last year?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, okay, suboptimal shape. Yeah, it's still like a decent big league fastball, but it's not a 70 grade big league fastball like you see people, grading it as. The splitter is a 70 or 80,
Yeah.
whichever way you slice it. So if you can give people that are sitting here watching Roki Sasaki's Cactus League debut, like one thing to watch,
Yeah.
and they can do it from home, what is it? Is it fastball execution?
You want to see swing and miss on the fastball. I don't care if the splitter's not there for whatever reason. Like that pitch is going to be there, and that
Yeah.
is potentially one of the best pitches. It's an outlier. Like you don't have to worry about that. I would say it's life on the fastball. How is that playing at the top of the zone? And then is he locating anything spin wise? Because like again, there was just so many misses arm side spin wise. Totally different feel baseball wise. Still getting used to everything. I do also think he's still getting used to the slightly altered arm angle that he had at the
Hmm.
end of last year because he came back from a shoulder thing. So like there's also just the fact that he was banged up last year and he's still getting back to Roki Sasaki after the layoff as well. So I do think that this is going to be a process to a degree, but yeah, I think that the two main things to watch is he how does the spin look? Is he locating it for a strike? And can that fastball get whiffs in the zone? Because if not, then he's going to become, a lot more dependent on that splitter. And the other thing is he was tugging that fastball down a little bit. It's a lot more hittable, I think, when it's down. Trying to play that up a little bit more, then the velocity will just naturally work. So I'm really excited to see what it looks like because maybe the adrenaline kind of gets him going, and you start to see that fastball life tick back up.
Do you have a Kyle Teal takeaway or no? It was just
He's
like,
way
oh,
stronger.
sick swing.
He's way stronger. I I had to double triple check that was Kyle Teal because like you can do like the swing silhouette for a lot of prospects and I'll know who it is, and it was the Kyle Teal swing silhouette. But like so I was that's Kyle Teal,
Yeah.
but he was so much more physical than he was a year ago that I wasn't positive. I had to check the number on the helmet and check the roster because he looked that different. So that is a really exciting thing because Teal's had the feel to hit, but it was always a really high effort swing that he could repeat, but it was high effort.
Yeah.
If he's stronger now too, like that really ups the ceiling offensively for him, and I was impressed there. But then you also did see, Sasaki bareback down, especially against righties, and actually weirdly had more success against righties. So I think that fastball was running in on them more. And then he picked apart Tim Elko with a few splitters because that splitter is going to work against righties or lefties.
Yeah.
So it was interesting too. I'd say probably how does that fastball play against lefties as well will be another thing to watch.
Okay. More so lefties than righties?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting to note. Again, Roki Sasaki will make his spring training debut tomorrow night against the Cincinnati Reds in Arizona. I want to bring up something that is kind of sort of frustrating me right now, and it's expanded Arsenal talk. And when I say expanded Arsenal talk, I'm not talking about Clay Holmes returning to the starting rotation and adding a kick change because he needed it. He needed a changeup. Like if he's going to be a starting pitcher, he needed another offering, and he found it with that changeup. I'm not talking about a Spencer Strider that's toying with the third pitch when he has two 80 grade pitches in the fastball and the slider. And I'm not talking about Paul Skeens, who is experimenting with a cutter right now, and that cutter looked absolutely diabolical against the Orioles in Sarasota in Skeens' spring training debut. Skeens is already throwing every pitch pretty much perfectly. And I know you could say, well, he could shore up the changeup. When he threw the changeup, it was disgusting. Like everything in his toolbox is plus plus, and now he's experimenting with a cutter to add another plus tool to his toolbox. The guys that I'm talking about are like Taj Bradley with a cutter, and Jared Jones with a sinker, and Griffin Canning adding a sinker. Guys like that. And the reason it like kind of gets to me is we are in the era of pitch design. I totally understand that. But I've been watching Jared Jones and we know that the fastball slider combination is really good. Okay? He has thrown a changeup and a curveball that were not very good. He was
No.
not landing them for strikes, and when he was, they were, getting hit. They were seen easily by hitters. And it's like, well, I'm working on something new. I'm working on a sinker. If you can't throw a changeup, okay, I understand the deviation from there. But if you have these tools that aren't that good, why not work on making those good instead of adding new toys to the sandbox? Like that's my overarching thought on that.
If he's abandoning the other two, then I think it makes sense. Like I was thinking about that when we were talking, because we talked about it yesterday, and then I was thinking about it overnight. Just like, what would be the time where it makes sense to unveil a new pitch, and when you don't have that clear cut third? If you feel so lost with the other two that you're trying to find if something separates itself. That said, like a sinker is not a true third pitch, so I do think he maybe is just looking for something to take the pressure off a little bit. Because to your point, like the curveball and changeup last year, he threw him a combined. This is between the big leagues and the minor leagues, combined 15% of the time, and I mean, you're looking at a slash line of 333, 342, 667. It's 1,009 OPS. That's not going to play. Obviously, the strike rate below, well below 60%. So maybe it's him just saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get these pitches to being usable at all. Let me see if I can find another offering. I don't know otherwise because you got to try to find a way to have that distinct third pitch because I think that's where we saw Jerry Jones also run into challenges at times when he wasn't spotting up the fastball slider combination, which can be elite, right? It can be that Strider starter kit. But if even Spencer Strider's looking for that third pitch, like you probably should too if you're Jerry Jones. Seems like he's trying, but it just seems like it's been a search for him for a while. So maybe he's just trying whatever he can.
Right. And for young arms, that's my thing here is like, okay, I understand if you're trying to add to a really plus two pitch mix. I totally get that, but it needs to be swapping something out. If you have a four pitch mix and you're only throwing two, why are you adding a fifth to just like build on top of the changeup and the curveball? If he's scrapping the changeup and he's trying fastball, slider, curveball, sinker, okay, I understand it there. So I'm with you, like sleeping on it a little bit more and kind of understanding that. I can get behind the idea of, okay, well, he's just trying to find the pitch that sticks. But if he's just adding toys for the sake of adding
Yeah.
toys, and if it came from a spot of boredom, and I have no idea, like we have to ask these pitchers directly. Like we have to ask Taj Bradley if he really feels confident that, this new pitch for him is going to be big, and he's like upping the cutter usage or he's trying to find a sweepier slider. Like, is this the right move for you? Every pitch for Taj performed very well last year, except his four seam fastball, which was still fine. But like his four seamer is his four seamer. It's very good. So it's like you have a feeling that it's going to result in better numbers in terms of opponent batting average and opponent slug. But it's guys adding tools for the sake of adding, and they were
Yeah.
bored. That rubs me the wrong way.
Well, and how often do we hear about the new pitch and then you never end up seeing it really in the regular season at all?
Yeah.
Like there's always, oh, this guy's got a new pitch here, and we get the buzz, and I think like all the people on Twitter will start talking about it, and then you don't see the pitch once, during the regular season because it's just not there for him. But to the point of Jared Jones, which is interesting, is in that last outing, I think it was only fastball, slider, sinker. So maybe he is going to lean into that
Okay.
and just be those three pitches. What's interesting though is even the sinker, he threw four of them, all four were up, like at the top third of the zone. So maybe it works up there. I'm interested to see like how he utilizes that, but I think he's got a better chance of having, a sinker at 94, 95 being effective than his changeup at this point. And I mean, you saw the curveball too. It just never seemed to really be there for him. So I'm with you. If he's still trying to throw those other pitches, it's kind of you're just overwhelming yourself at that point.
Yeah.
But if he's just leaning into the sinker, saying I'll ride my fastball and slider, and the sinker's enough to change eye level or just change action horizontally, that could be just all he needs to just take hitters off of the two pitch pattern.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it was driving me nuts for a little bit. I was like, if people are adding for the sake of adding, and this is always the time of the year where you hear all that, right? And you see the videos of the tread bullpens, and you think about Bryce Miller's splitter last year. Like, he actually needed that. Like that was something he needed to find a third pitch, and he found it with that split, and it looked good last year. But there are so many arms where it's like, yeah, I'm working on this. It's kind of a secret. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, you have other pitches that are lagging behind. I would think about making those a little bit better before you get super creative in your off season. So that was just driving me a little nuts.
No, it's fair. Especially because it's this time of year where we're just grasping for anything. Guys are always messing around in the bullpens. The difference is there's a lot more cameras on the bullpens now, and there's a lot
Yeah.
more data
And
that
there's
you
a
can
lot
just
more media.
export.
Yeah. And there's a lot more media availability too, where it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, here's a chance to talk
Well,
about the new thing that you're messing around with.
well, what the hell else are you going to talk about this early in spring training? Oh, hey, Jared. How you been feeling? Good. I'm ramping up. Oh,
Good.
great. Anything new? Yeah, I fucked around with this pitch the other day. Like I don't.
Yeah.
It's just such a natural progression. I guess it's where we're at too, where it's like,
Probably.
what else are you going to cover as a beat writer this early in the
I
season?
I got a dog, bought a house,
Yeah,
just things like that. I don't
I
know.
guess.
Some personal stuff.
People would rather hear about the kick change.
I think so, but I want to hear about the new dog or whatever it may be. All right, we're going to get to our American League West preview in a moment. Before that, quick break. Want to start our American League preview with the Houston Astros, the team that won the division last year. They were the worst division winner in the American League. They took on the Tigers in the wild card, and they did fall. I'm going to kind of run through the depth chart And I just want us to ID a strength and a weakness of the overall team. It's a different looking Houston Astros team. Obviously, there is no Kyle Tucker and there's no Alex Bregman. As it stands right now, Yainer Diaz is the catcher. Victor Caratini is backing him up. They did buy him. Christian Walker, 3 year, $60 million deal. He is the first baseman. Jose Altuve, because they did not bring Bregman back, is going to be at second. Jeremy Pena at short. Isaac Paredes, who they acquired in that Tucker deal, will be at third base. The outfield looking like Jake Myers, Chas McCormick, Ben Gamel, Mauricio Dubon floating around as the fourth. DH will be Yordan Alvarez, John Singleton, and Brendan Rodgers, who they signed to a minor league free agent deal, a non-roster invite, fill out the bench. Rotation looks great. Fromber, Hunter Brown, Ronel Blanco, Arrighetti, Wisniewski. They have Luis Garcia coming back, and you still have Josh Hader, Jose Abreu, Taylor Scott, Brian King on the back end of that bullpen. For me, like the clear cut weakness of this team going into this year is the outfield. And no
Well,
Tucker obviously hurts.
I think that's why Altuve is probably just going to play left. I
You think
think that
so?
I
It
think
would
that's
be
what they're going
Brendan
to.
Rodgers at second and Altuve in left.
I think it gives them a better chance to try to piece this thing together, like where you can put, Altuve in left field, and then I think it's easier to mix and match the infield. You also want to give Rogers, a shot here where if it works out for him and he's swinging it a little bit better, I think he's a better option than probably Ben Gamel is in left field. You also have a Zach DeZenzo where I don't know how it would look at second, but if he's performing well, maybe he goes to third and Paredes goes to second. I think oh, they could also put DeZenzo on left. They've talked about that, and he did play there in winter ball. I feel like with Altuve still getting the action in left, that they're probably gonna do it. And he also didn't he ditch the glove? Didn't he give a kid his infield glove and say, I'm not playing infield anymore, so I gave a kid my glove?
I didn't see that story. That's pretty
Hold on,
ceremonious.
I'm almost positive he gave a kid a glove. Yeah, so Jose Altuve officially retires infield glove before spring training debut. So
So
yeah.
that's crazy. I didn't see that story.
Yeah, he's kind of like a kid in a candy store right now. Astros first base coach Dave Clark told the Athletics Chandler Rome, this is a challenge for him, and he's going to go out and give it the best effort he possibly can. He's going to be fine out there. I really do think. Like we haven't really seen any game action reps, but then Julia Morales put this out as well. She said Jose Altuve's glove, it's an outfield glove. He's told me he's quote officially an outfielder because he gave his infield glove to a kid.
Man, okay. So that changes the narrative around the Houston Astros entirely. I also like that because Dubon can still hop on the infield too. So
Yeah, and
Dubon,
I'd rather him.
Rogers, yeah,
Yeah, I'd rather move him that way, where he's plugging it into center field if you really need, but really second base is probably where he profiles best. And then you've got Rogers there as well. It seems to make more sense in general. And yeah, I think Altuve, his speed will translate, I think, a little bit more in left field, whereas like his quickness and range is not really there as much at second base, but I still think the straight line speed is clearly there. So I think that will translate a little bit more in left field. I like it from that lens, and then you can kind of just wait and see and plug in at second base when you can. But you want more slug out of left field, obviously, at a corner outfield spot, and you lost that with Tucker. So I do think that puts him in a pretty good spot. I do think it's weird that he gave up the glove though, because there could be plenty of opportunities where you want to plug him at second base. I'm sure he has another glove, but you're gonna have to break it in all over again.
yeah.
That was an interesting like figurative move there by Altuve, but. I'm sure he's going to play second base again at
Well,
some point.
and here's the thing: is it going to backfire like the Miguel Cabrera Spencer Torkelson gloves transfer when Miggy handed Torque the first base glove and
Oh
everybody was
God, I forgot
crying?
about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
There's
oh
no
God.
video of it, so Torque wouldn't watch it anyway. Um, yeah, it is fascinating. Strength of the Houston Astros. I would say the rotation. I'm just looking at it, and Framber Valdez is. I mean, I know you made the case last year at the beginning of the year that he could very well be the best arm in baseball, and then Skubal had his year, and
Yeah.
Wheeler had his year, and Skeens had his year, but we were searching for that guy, and I thought, what, midway through the 2023 season that McClanahan was that guy. You thought Framber Valdez was that guy, and that was when kind of we were moving off the DeGrom thing, and all he's done is just shove. Hunter Brown looked amazing. Renel Blanco led qualified starters in batting average against. Arrighetti is high ceiling, low floor, but the high ceiling is really fun to watch. And then you've got Wisniewski as a placeholder for Luis Garcia, who sounds like he'll be back a couple weeks after the start of the regular
which
season.
is huge.
Huge, and who knows about McCullers, but I've seen videos of him throwing off a mound, and that's really exciting.
Wow. I
Yeah.
actually haven't seen that yet. That's great.
Yeah.
That'll be one where like I don't even care if he's pitching to a 4.5 ERA. If he can get out there and throw 60, 80 innings at some point this year, I'd just be so damn happy for the guy. Right?
Yeah.
Like I forget the results and I think it will go a long way just for the Astros in general. Yes, not a lot of the same guys from the World Series teams are there, but you still have a handful. And regardless, I mean, even these younger guys have been around him, I'm sure, and by all accounts, is like a well liked guy in the clubhouse. You can imagine what it'll probably do for this Astros team just to see him back out there, back on the mound, and whatever role that may be. But I mean, the pitching situation now that they hung on to Framber and then we're able to add Wisniewski for depth. Again, you're not expecting a ton out of him, but just having another iron in the fire is huge because of with the injuries and everything. It was becoming a bit of a conversation. Where it's like, okay, if Arrighetti's not throwing well or Ronel Blanco regresses, like you might have two spots that are kind of up in the air in the rotation. Now you feel pretty good about the depth there. The bullpen still has the ability to be absolutely lights out, especially when you have Josh Hader and Brian Abreu in the eighth and ninth inning, so they can always make an impact there. Forrest Whitley's look good. It's you just hope he can stay healthy, but the stuff is still there. I like where they're at pitching wise, and Framber really sets the tone there. But the Framber Brown combination, and if Blanco's anything near where he was before, and I do really think Arrighetti figured some things out at the end of last year, this rotation can be right up there with the top, top, I would say top third of the league, and be able to be consistent there.
Yiner Diaz, I know that we are a couple weeks removed from our top 10 lists, but fill in the blank. Yiner Diaz at the end of the 25 season will be a top blank catcher in baseball.
Mm. It's become a very good position. Like it really
I
has.
know, but
That's
he feels very X Factor-ish to me.
yeah. I mean, I think very easily he can be into that top 8, 9 conversation. I'm like pulling up the position now because you almost have to go one by one by one and really say like who can he reasonably overtake here. He could probably push into that top 5 or 6 depending on the age curve with some of the vets and then what other rookies like does Austin Wells take a leap?
Yeah.
How do some of these other guys fare? But I think Yiner could easily be in the top 5
Yeah.
if he has it takes another step forward.
He's just a freaky athlete, man. Overall strength, do you agree it's starting rotation?
Yes, which is wild to say, but I think you could also still say the offense, where
Yeah.
like like yes, you lost Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman,
Yeah, but that infield is very good.
but Isak Paredes is projected to have a 127 WRC plus, and we always talk about projections are conservative, right?
Yeah.
Jordan is projected to have a 171.
Yeah.
I mean, you look through the lineup here: Altuve 120, Paredes 127. Alvarez 171, Christian Walker 120, and obviously he's going to play great defense. Yiner 117, which is conservative. Jeremy Pena 103, which is probably about fair. And then Chas McCormick should easily be able to bounce back. And then Gamble and Myers defensive specialist 104 and 97 respectively. But like that's pretty darn solid, especially with the bench being what it is. Like Caratini's a great backup option and a good pinch hitter and bat off the bench. Singleton, we'll see what happens this year, but I love the Rogers edition. And then Dubon's one of the better utility pieces that you can have. So I think you could argue that the offense is a
Yeah.
safer pick here because the floor is so much higher. Like what you're getting with Altuve, Alvarez, and Walker. And I think you could argue that what you're getting with Paredes now because of where he's calling home. So I don't know. I think it's a toss-up, but that's what makes this team really good.
I think I'm going to brand it as their top 10 players. There are 26 players on an active roster. I think if you clumped Houston's top 10, they are as good as really any top 10 in baseball that isn't the LA Dodgers in terms of top 10 players on the roster. And for the sake of the exercise, I'll give you Yordan Alvarez, Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown, Jose Altuve, Isak Paredes is 5, Christian Walker is 6, Yiner Diaz is 7, Josh Hader is 8, Brian Abreu is 9, and give me a 10th. Like it can be anybody. I haven't said Pena yet. it can be Pena. Like
Yeah, I mean, it
that's a really good top end of a roster.
it could be at either of the arms too. There's a lot of people out there that are very high on Arrighetti or even what Ronel Blanco did last year. So that's still a very solid 10th best player.
Yeah,
You could also argue a healthy Luis Garcia could be in that conversation. We'll see how he's throwing when he comes back. So yeah, I mean the top end of this team is absolutely a force. And if some of the role players, like if McCormick bounces back, I think this really does elevate this ball club. Or you get something clicking for a Brendan Rodgers who definitively wanted to go here. It's a great spot to be, I think, if you're the Astros, considering how much they lost, to still
yeah,
be in a spot where you can talk yourself into this team making a run, just like every single year.
for sure. All right, let's go to the Seattle Mariners here. Giving you the rundown of the Mariners lineup, you've got Cal Raleigh as the starting catcher and pretty much the everyday catcher. Mitch Garver as his backup, along with being a DH option. You got Luke Raley at first. Tyler Locklear is also a first base option. Second base is Dylan Moore. J.P. Crawford at short. Third base is going to be Jorge Polanco, who they brought back. Then the outfield, Victor Robles, Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, Dominic Canzone is there as well. Haniger / Garver, again, the DH. But then you have like Donovan Solano, Dominic Canzone, and Leo Rivas on their bench. Rotation is perfect. That's obviously the strength. Gilbert, Castillo, Kirby, Miller, and Wu. This bullpen kind of sends me for a little bit of a loop because I think a lot of people are just quick to assume that the Mariners bullpen is going to be awesome. I think Munoz is great. Colin Snyder was really good last year. And they're going to get Brash back from Tommy John surgery as well, looking like
Yeah.
he's tracking for a May or June return. But I look at the rest of these bullpen arms. I know Gregory Santos can throw fireballs, but he missed the majority of last year with injury. I don't know how elite this bullpen is. The rotation is clearly elite, and I think the clear weakness is the lineup overall. Just firepower. We haven't seen a good Mariners offense. I want to see Julio Rodriguez be great and the rest of a Mariners
Yeah.
lineup be good. But the big seesaw for me to make Seattle a postseason contender or not is the bullpen. Are they awesome? Are they top 10? I have no idea.
I agree. I mean, like the offense has gotten to a point where we talk about them where I think they've almost become a little overhated.
Yeah.
And I like yes, and I think it's because of the fact that they could address it and haven't significantly. So then it becomes increasingly frustrating. It's not like they were the worst offensive team in human history, and obviously, like with everybody struggling or in that stadium, excuse me, if you look at a lot of the numbers, especially in the second half, like they held serve offensively. It's just frustrating because it's like if you didn't have the drop off that you have in the back half of your lineup, and so many spots where like there's two or three spots in the lineup at times where it's like that feels like an auto out. That said, they still have one of the best hitting catchers in Major League Baseball in Cal Raleigh. You still have Randy Arozarena. Luke Raley's proven to just be a consistent bat. Robles has been just a special find, and of course J Rod. I think we still may end up picking him as like as an MVP pick every year until it finally clicks back for him, and he did finish the year strong for the most part. So like it's not terrible. I think it's just frustrating because they have all of the assets and they should have enough money to be able to sign somebody, and they have the assets prospect wise to be able to trade for somebody. Yet all we see is bringing back Jorge Polanco and then Donovan Solano, who I actually do love to bolster that bench, but like
Yeah.
that can't be it. So if I'm looking at like what looks like it could be the most definitive weakness, I don't disagree that it could be the bullpen because outside of Munoz, yeah, I mean, you don't have a ton of confidence, I think, in really any of these guys grabbing the eighth or if Munoz threw 40 pitches the night before and like a grinded out save, who's getting the ninth? Is it Colin Snyder? I mean, the projection systems don't love him at all based
Yeah.
on the underlying last year. Yes, he was great, but it's just interesting to see. Maybe it's Santos based on the stuff, but he's got to be healthy as well. That's probably the area where I think you could say it's the biggest question because they're not going to be a top offense in baseball, even if they're better. There's going to be a lot of close games, and if the bullpen's giving up wins, it's going to be hard for them. And I think that can make it very, very difficult to shake out of losing streaks or maintain hot stretches.
Name I do think is really interesting in that bullpen, and they've got some options down there. Troy Taylor is an interesting name to me. Troy Taylor showed very well last year when he did get to the big league level, 19 and a 30, K 25, and walked seven. Will Klein is a guy that we've been monitoring for a while. Threw in the
Yeah.
futures game for Kansas City. He throws 100 miles an hour. Is he going to be anywhere near the strike zone? The Mariners figure out ways to get arms in the strike zone. And on that same line of thinking, Shintaro Fujinami is a humongous X factor
Yeah.
for me there.
Yeah, actually huge because that is a guy stuff wise that could end up grabbing, a spot in that bullpen. It's tough because you do want to give them the benefit of the doubt because they seem to always be able to piece it together and identify a lot of bullpen arms and successful ones. But I don't know. Do you think the lineup is more of a weakness or that bullpen? Because
Like I'm just kind of stuck on the narrative, and I'm with you. Like they've become overhated, but I'm part of the problem there. I know that, and I am quick to just say, "Oh, they're never going to be good because of the batter's eye." Like I'm waiting on them to fix the batter's eye. To be
yeah, they got to
honest,
figure that out.
they have to figure that out. You can't bank on any good season from a right-handed bat. We saw how freaking good Teoscar Hernandez is objectively, and if Teo can't hit in Seattle, I don't know which righties can hit in Seattle.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see a full year from Randy Arozarena there. Because
Yeah.
if Randy is giving me Tampa type numbers, I'm like, all right, they just need to find the right-handed bat. If
Well,
Randy
and
can't do it on the heels of Teoscar, I'm like, is anybody going to figure it out?
yeah, yeah. Well, and he has had some stretches, but yeah, you want to see him absolutely kind of push through there. And people point out like WRC plus and the park adjusted stats and things like that, but of course, it's going to be park adjusted because no one hits there. And I understand it's relative, but it is an interesting, just larger conversation in general. But if you just go through the OPS, is like they had one hitter with an OPS over 800 last year that was a regular in the lineup, and that was Victor Robles, who had 295 plate appearances. So, like, that they need a feared, masher outside of Cal Raleigh, and that's got to be J Rod, and he's kind of the guy that can really, I think, elevate this offense to
Yeah.
being solid or not. I hate pitting. Baseball is almost never on one hitter or one guy, but I think they have enough okay, solid mid 700s OPS guys that are going to run into some balls, but like J Rod's the guy that I think can either elevate this offense to right above league average
Yeah.
or below that with continued struggles and another 740 OPS or whatever.
And there's a big difference between what Bobby Witt did for Kansas City in 2024 and what the tandem of J Rod and Cal Raleigh could do for the Mariners in 2025, but that sensation is similar. I'm not talking about production level because it's one guy versus two, but it's also Alex freaking Rodriguez against two guys.
You could argue that, I mean, the offense around J Rod, like this going into this year,
Better.
with the Mariners could be better than the offense that was around Bobby Witt Jr. last year. And like, if I think it's ridiculous to ask for him to have a Bobby Witt season, but he's capable of having whatever season he wants to have, essentially, J Rod. He's that talented. So if he has 75, 80% of a Bobby Witt season, I do think he can have that level of impact, right,
And
on the team.
yeah, and what I'm asking for is Cal Raleigh and Julio Rodriguez to combine for 11 or 12 WAR. I'm not asking for Bobby Witt 10 and a half WAR from J
Yeah.
Rod. I'm asking for J Rod to have a 5.5 win
Yep.
season and for Cal Raleigh to have a 5.5 win season. And I
Yeah.
think Cal Raleigh can do that. I just want to see them both do it at the same time, and then we figure out if this thing can actually happen.
Yeah, Riley just did it, right? Like he had a
Yeah.
5.5 last year, and he hit 34 bombs. So like, yeah, if J Rod can match that, I think it's a totally different conversation with this team, and I think it's going to elevate everybody else too, right? Like,
Yeah.
because now you're fearing two guys in the middle of that lineup, and that's going to make it easier for Randy Rosarena, and that's going to make it easier for Luke Raley, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I'm really much, I'm very much banking on that J Rod breakthrough this year, and I think we kind of saw it at the second half. He's always been kind of that slow starter, but he's got to shake that.
Better rotation, Seattle or Philly? Philly is Wheeler, Nola, Sanchez, Ranger, Luzardo with Painter on the outside. Seattle is Castillo, Gilbert, Kirby, Miller, Wu, and Logan Evans on the outside.
Mm. It's really hard because I think some of these arms in Seattle are still trending up Like you could argue, you could definitely argue we haven't seen the best of Bryce Miller. I think we're going to continue to see better Bryce
Yeah.
Miller because just how much of a student he is. He's a guy that can experiment with all the pitches he wants.
Yeah.
But then you have Luis Castillo probably being the one guy that's probably on the downturn a little bit. But you could argue that George Kirby is still, getting better and better. I mean, we saw Logan Gilbert continue to get better. Whereas, you look at the Phillies, Wheeler's 35, Nola's 32. Luzardo, I think, really does elevate this rotation, though, and then you have Sanchez and Suarez. I think the safe answer is the Mariners, but I think if all of these Phillies guys are pitching to their ability, and Wheeler fights off Father Time for another year,
Yeah.
it's hard to argue that there's any rotation better than that, especially if Luzardo is looking like 2023 Luzardo, which was arguably a top 20 arm in the game.
Yeah, the one for me is Ranger. Like Ranger was so good before the All-Star break, and then we saw him just kind of fall apart. If Ranger is looking like pre-All-Star Ranger, I think I'm ready to say that the Phillies rotation is better than the Mariners, but that's a big toss up there. And I
For me, it's
deem it kind of unlikely.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like how available is Brian Wu? I honestly can't even believe he threw 121 innings. It felt like even less than that because
Right.
he was missing starts or leaving them. But fortunately, it seemed like it would never be anything too serious. But he's so darn tough to hit, and he walks nobody. It was a 2.89 ERA. If
Yeah.
he's giving you similar numbers in 150, 160 innings, I mean, that rotation's just ridiculous. Like, there's a chance that if Brian Wu is pitching to his ability, there's a chance Luis Castillo is, from a run prevention standpoint, is your worst pitcher
Yeah.
next year. Like, that's a great spot to be in. So that's why I lean Mariners the more I've digested it. But
Mhm.
I mean, with Painter waiting in the wings and what the Phillies have to, it's going to be a really fun battle, I think, between those two.
It is nutso, man. All right, let's go to the Texas Rangers here. Reminder, we're 1 year removed from them winning a World Series championship. Their lineup as it stands right now, Jonah Heim, Kyle Higashioka as the catchers. Higgy pickup is big to
Yeah.
elevate the floor of that catching situation because we saw Heim really struggle last year
Mhm.
after being awesome in 2023. Jock Peterson is their DH. Infield, Jake Berger at first, Semien at second, Seager at short, Josh Young healthy again at third base. The outfield, Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter, Adolis Garcia, Leody Taveras is on the bench. Ezekiel Duran can play a bunch of spots. Josh Smith can play more spots.
Yeah.
Starting rotation, Eovaldi, DeGrom, Gray, Malley, Bradford. Kumar Rocker is going to be in there somewhere. I'm excited to see where he fits in, and I think Jack Leiter gets a shot to fit into this rotation as
Yeah.
well. The clear deficiency is the bullpen. If this bullpen finds some answers on the trade market, they can play in November again. I'm very confident in that because they have DeGrom and Eovaldi, DeGrom off of TJ. I'm buying all the Rocker stock. I'm buying the lighter bump this year. And this lineup, I know that there were some down years, but they've put together a near flawless product for me when I just look and try and envision the next 6 months.
Especially with Jock added to the fold now too. I mean, you want Adolis to bounce back, but I don't know if you desperately need it like they may have if they didn't make the moves that they made, especially with an Evan Carter healthy. I think the Berger addition was great because Berger on a team like this is a nice luxury to have. On a team like the Marlins, him being hot and cold, you feel it more. On a team like the Rangers, if he's a little cold, that's okay. And if he's hot, holy crap, I don't know who are you going to pitch to,
Yeah.
or who are you going to pitch around on this team. So, um, I think the very interesting side of things is just the entire pitching conversation because DeGrom and Eovaldi obviously like the variables there. Although Eovaldi's somehow been as consistent as anybody in Major League Baseball over the last few years,
Yeah.
DeGrom being the big variable and Maui as well. But the young guys, because I think Kumar is first up, and he's going to end up, grabbing a lot of innings and becoming important for them as long as he's healthy. But with Emiliano Teodo and Jack Leiter,
Yeah.
I think you could make a case that both of those guys could be two of their best high leverage arms tomorrow.
Yes.
And we saw Jack Leiter in a short spurt in the first outing in spring training touching 100 and absolutely blowing the fastball by hitters. And JJ Cooper talked about this from Baseball America, and they put a clip out. It was great context where Jack Leiter's fastball just, of course, anyone's fastball is going to perform better at 98, 99 than it does 96, 97. But Jack Leiter's discrepancy in fastball performance, both in AAA and in the major leagues, is a larger gap between the average discrepancy between the fastball performance of 96, 97 versus, 98, 99. So when Jack Leiter's 98, 99, his fastball is absolutely dominant. When he's 96, 97, that's where we saw him kind of get beat up a little bit in starts. So in short spurts where he would be sitting 98, 99, 100 out of the bullpen with that fastball, I think he could overwhelm hitters. Of course, command has been the challenge for him. He's got the breaking ball, and there's not as much pressure to throw strikes. I still think long term you can move Jack Leiter back to the rotation because he's such a hard worker and has the ability to be a great starter at the major league level. But if we're talking about for next year, I think you could say the same thing with Teodo as well. This is a team that's trying to win the World Series. If the rotation's holding up, I think those guys in the bullpen could really turn a weakness into a more exciting, maybe not strength just yet, but not a weakness anymore. At least eliminate that.
I really like that shout. And I've been looking externally, to be honest. Like, I look at San Francisco, and do you want to leverage arm from them? Try it. You have the prospects to do that. They have the prospects to move for any reliever that they want. And it's not like I'm not talking about Clase and Duran because those guys are untouchable. But if the Cardinals are thinking about packing it up, they have the prospect capital to move for Ryan Helsley, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's at the deadline or whether it's today. They can do it whenever they want with whoever they want. Alejandro Rosario going down kind of sucks,
Sucks.
but I feel like they probably wouldn't be moving him anyways
No,
for
he would
especially a
probably be the
1 year
one
closer.
guy I would not move in that farm system. So
Yeah.
yeah, he wasn't going anywhere,
For
I don't
everybody
think.
else, man, it's like you can grab a decent reliever for Justin Foscue, who has zero place on this team. And it sucks because I want to see him get run. It's a lot like Curtis Mead in Tampa, where he's been so good in the upper levels for so long, but
Yeah,
he's probably not good enough to be an everyday player in the big leagues. And it's like, all right, well, let's see what you can do. Let's move you for a stuffy reliever and see if it works.
yeah,
We talked about it last week. Really liked the get in the return for Nate Lowe, which is good. But I mean, overall, I just look at this bullpen and say I want leverage. And if that's Leiter throwing gas in the ninth inning, if that's Teodo throwing gas in the ninth inning, or it's Leiter and or Teodo bridging to Helsley, I mean, this team can win 100 games with that
yeah,
lineup. The X factor for me is Evan Carter. I really want to see what this guy does over 162.
yeah. I think that's fair because I mean him hitting to he's going to defend and
Yeah.
he's going to walk generally. Him hitting to the best of his ability. By the way, still just 22 years old.
Hmm.
Um, that could be a guy that puts up shades of a Jackson Merrill season. I don't think he's going to do that, but like he has the ability to be in that conversation. So that is as big of an X factor as I think you can have. And I agree with you 100%. You could argue just availability of Corey Seager as well, but that's kind of low hanging fruit. I think the second tier X factor to build off of that is probably the young guys outside of, because if you don't want to go like obvious, of course, DeGrom, Malley, all of that. But do they use these upper minors arms that are extremely talented and can work in short leverage in the eighth and ninth inning, or do they just use them as waiting in the wings guys to plug and play in the rotation? I think that's going to be entirely dependent on the rotation health. So I think obviously the biggest thing is just going to be how available are these other guys, because that's going to have a trickle down to the young guys and how you utilize them. Great
Yeah.
problem to have that I think Chris Young would welcome is how do we get innings at the big league level for Teodo and Leiter?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then that means your bullpen just got better.
Yes.
Good fallback is okay, well, Tyler Malley's hurt again. DeGrom's going to miss some time. Hopefully, knock on wood, that does not happen. Oh, well, we've got Leiter who we can plug and hopefully it clicks. And we've got Teodo who we can plug and hopefully it clicks. Of course, the former, much more desirable situation. You're not stunting Leiter's development at this point. He
No.
can revisit the rotation thing next year. I think it'd be great for his confidence too at the big league level, where I think him in one inning spurts, I think he could be a plus closer at the big league level. I really do.
DL Hall. Do you see that kind of thing there where you
Yeah, where
can
DL was
reintroduce him?
disgusting.
He
Yeah,
was
100%.
nasty as a reliever.
100%. I think he could be their best high leverage arm. What 39-year-old Chris Martin going to do it on a retirement deal? Like,
Yes.
maybe.
Robert
I
Garcia.
really do
Yes.
believe that.
Yeah, man. I'm looking at this. I mean, the projections really do not like the Ranger bullpen. Like best ERA is Chris Martin, then you got Robert Garcia, but then it's like, Hobie Milner and Luke Jackson. Luke Jackson off of a major surgery. They have one relief arm that will throw legit innings for them that is under the age of 30. And that's scary. So if you have some young flamethrowers, that's really where you can start cooking. So I'm very excited to see what Texas can do this year. Sacktown's an interesting one. Obviously, the strength is one side of the ball. Obviously, the weakness is the other side of the ball. Their lineup is fun. Their lineup is young. That is the strength. The A's lineup is Shea Langoliers catching. Johnny Pareto will be his backup. Soderstrom should get every chance to be the everyday first baseman until Nick Kurtz is ready. And then you got to figure out what to do with Soderstrom. Brent Rooker is their designated hitter. Rooker is one of the best DHs in Major League Baseball. Geloff at second. Jacob Wilson, full season at shortstop. Gio Urshela at third base. Luis Urias as his backup. The outfield looking like it's Seth Brown, J.J. Bleday, and Lawrence Butler with Esteury Ruiz as his backup and Miguel Andujar here as well. It's not sexy outside of five names, but it's young, and you can hope on a good first full season for Jacob Wilson, and you can hope for that breakout coming true for Lawrence Butler, and you can welcome Nick Kurtz to the fold and have Soderstrom find ABs, and it's a good problem to have because you've got a bunch of lefty bats that you can have bounce around a little bit. They would benefit from one of those guys playing a corner outfield. Kurtz is a very good defensive first baseman. They did the Matt Olson right field thing for a minute when Olson first came up. Could you see a world where Kurtz is doing that?
I think so. I think it's very possible. I was going to bring that up because he's such a good athlete for how big he is. It wouldn't shock me. They gave him a little bit of run out there at the end of last year. And I think with how good the bat has looked when he's been on the field as a pro already, he's just going to get there so quick that that's the most obvious place to plug him in, I think. Because, of course, Soderstrom, they're also having him catch more. So I think that's another way where you can maybe split time because you don't want to just fully throw Kurtz into the outfield full time because he is such a good defensive first baseman. He could be a plus defensive first baseman as he continues to progress. But Soderstrom all of a sudden is getting more catching reps again. So I do wonder if they're kind of going with Soderstrom eventually as kind of the backup in a way. And then that's a way where you can kind of mix and match at between first base and left field and keep Kurtz in the lineup. Because I think Soderstrom is an offensive piece. It does temper my breakout expectations a tad that now that he has to worry about catching again.
Yeah.
But as a hitter, I really do think this is a year where it comes together for Soderstrom. Sneaky actually had pretty good numbers last year, too, for a guy that was kind of shuttling back and forth a little bit. He was 22 years old last year, too. So I think we get excited about these guys. It doesn't totally click when they're 21, 22 at the big league level. Then we move on to the next exciting guy coming up. And then when they finally figure it out a year or two later than we thought, it's like, oh, I think that's exactly what's going to happen with Soderstrom. He hits the living crap out of the ball. He's gotten better and better each time I check in. And, I thought it would happen last year. It started to at the end of the year. If he breaks through and then you have Kurtz coming up, and Soderstrom splitting time between catcher and first, and then you have Kurtz splitting time between left and first. Pretty much 1 through 9 in this lineup, maybe aside from third base, which you could argue Max Muncy ends up grabbing that spot within a couple
Yeah.
months anyways as well, their former first-round pick. You could say there's intrigue 1 through 9 through this lineup and guys that could easily take another step forward. I think they're going to mash a little bit. They'll be frustrating at times, don't get me wrong, but with Butler ascending and Rooker proven, and I think Bleday at least proven solid at this point too, and
Yeah.
Langlier's proven solid. I think this team can swing it with some of the better teams.
Yeah. My main concern is like they might lead the league in losing games 10-9 because this pitching staff is really not good. You have to figure out a way to get to Mason Miller. And I just don't see a world where they can do that. Severino and Springs are absolutely serviceable starters. And Springs got extended with Tampa. They acquired that in the trade. By the way, Joe Boyle hitting 101.5 or whatever it was. I know the Rays are going to do it. And the thing is, We've presented the caution so many times. It's like, hey, just because they're the Rays, don't think that it's this magic wand that they can,
Yeah.
wave around Joe Boyle and he'll be awesome. I actually think it might be a magic wand that they just wave around Joe
If Joe
Boyle and he's
Boyle's
great.
if he's throwing strikes, I'll shut up. I'll
Yeah,
start saying it's a magic wand. I know that they have abilities and they do it. Like obviously they develop well.
yeah,
If Joe Boyle's not walking guys and he's a starter, tip the cap. I will just assume every Rays pitcher is gonna become the best version of themselves.
that's me. He's like the final boss of deciding if the Rays have weird voodoo powers. But Severino and Springs, very formidable one too. And then you get to J.P. Sears, Osvaldo Bido, and Mitch Spence. Okay.
I'm gonna make a case. I'm gonna
Beto.
make a case.
You're gonna make a case for
Not
Beto.
for these guys.
Okay.
Not for
Oh
these
yeah, yeah,
dudes.
yeah. Fair.
Um, did you see what Gunnar Hoglund did the other day?
No.
He might be back.
Cool.
I don't know how they're gonna use him because he didn't start, but I don't care. You said the pitching staff. I agree. This is one of those situations where it's can you get outs? Yeah, okay, great. Let's add you to the fold. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's starter, reliever, whatever. Hoglund, he has had a brutal injury history, and he was a guy that even going back to college, easy first round talent. It just has always dealt with injury issues for the last several years. In 2023, his fastball averaged like 91 miles per hour. In 2024, he got a tick back and he was closer to, 92, 93. I understand he averaged 92.2 to be exact.
Hmm.
It's short sample, a small sample, short spurt here. But in 12 pitches in his first appearance here in spring training, he averaged 97. And then he threw 33 pitches in the next outing where he punched out four, by the way, not giving up a hit, and he was sitting in the mid 90s again. If that's the case, if he got himself healthy again, I don't care what the role is, right? They added him to the 40 to protect him from the Rule 5 for a reason. They obviously saw this uptick. He's going to be filling a role for them one way or another, and that is huge. And I do think it could still be as a starter for them if one of these other guys, is not holding serve.
If we can swap out Sears, Beto, and Spence, and we can insert Hogland, Mason Barnett, and Jack Perkins at some point, I feel a lot better about
And
this
that was going to be the
situation.
rest of my pitch. You've already heard it on the call up. Like
Yeah.
Jack Perkins made a switch in the second half of the season, release wise, and it changed everything. If he gets a shot to pitch this year, he's like my most underrated prospect that's gonna get up and make an impact. The question that people love to ask. Jack Perkins might be one of my favorite picks, and Barnett's not far behind. I love both of those arms. I think both can be number four caliber starters for the A's as soon as the second half of next year.
Giving people some understanding, your pick for that exact thing last year was Christian Scott in New York. So
Yeah,
Arm
exactly. Yeah.
Arm kind of knows what he's talking about, unfortunately. So sorry for the haters, but Sacktown may be cooking. The bullpen is really weird to me, and like Leclerc, I do think Leclerc can be better than he was in 24, and that's a decent setup guy for the second
Yes.
best closer in Major League Baseball, to Mason Miller. But but like the rest of that bullpen, man, I look at that and I'm like, are we in on Otanez? Like, how are we doing this?
Grant Holman, I like a
Grant
little
Holman
bit,
had a good year, yeah.
but I'm with you. It's rough. And that's where it's like, okay, so do you bring up Hoglund in a relief role? Maybe. I could probably see that out of the gate. He's already on the 40, so that might be where they address that. They've got some arms in the minors who could maybe plug and play. If Cusick could ever throw a strike, he
Yeah.
could be a good reliever. They added Jacob Lopez in a trade from the Rays. He's been able to get outs at points, especially in AAA. But yeah, it's got to be the bullpen, pitching staff in general. But the thing is like they have a top three closer in the game. So is the bullpen a bigger weakness or the rotation?
Rotation, I think.
Yeah, because I think we're all expecting Severino to just take a full
Take a
step
step back.
backwards. I hope
Yeah.
not, but like,
Right. And
I've-
Springs, like I've liked Springs, but like is a relative term. I don't know if Springs can be a two for a
nah,
team
it's
that is
fine on a
the Tampa
two.
Bay Rays.
No, I mean, he's a good middle rotation. I mean, he finished the year really strong as he got further away from that Tommy John. But yeah, especially when Severino is not a one. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's got to be the rotation. But I can see the vision down the line
Sure.
of just having more arms in the fold there. And I think because of how iffy some of these arms are going to be
Sure.
at points this year, I think we may end up seeing Barnett and Perkins earlier than we think. One other name who I do think going to call a shot here. No one's going to care or remember. Elvis Alvarado, I
Okay.
think is going to become one of their better high leverage arms as well.
Throws 100,
Triple A
right?
guy. Yeah. Sorry.
Throws 100.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
disgusting. That was a guy that I know the Marlins probably weren't thrilled to lose. He could be disgusting. He walks everybody, but that's another guy. If it's anywhere near the zone, could be one of their better high leverage arms.
I have an X factor in mind on the big club already. Do you?
On the big club already, I mean, for me, naturally, you eliminate Butler, Rooker, Blade, Langliers.
Yeah.
So it's
That's why I went to Jacob Wilson. Like Wilson for me is
yeah,
my X
yeah.
factor.
It's your freaking shortstop.
It's
Yeah,
your shortstop, and if he's one of the better bat to ball, infielders in Major League Baseball, better bat to ball position players, period, in Major League Baseball, like, and you have an answer at shortstop, that gets you a heck of a lot more excited for that move to Vegas.
especially now that he looks like a solid defender there, where
Yeah,
I think he can progress into an above average defender. Yeah, if he's just contact oriented, getting on base at a good enough clip, and he's not going to walk, but if he's hitting for average and sneaking enough doubles, and he's playing, if he looks like an everyday, slightly above average shortstop, that elevates this team a ton and really does give this lineup a great balance. So yeah, I'm with you. It has to be Jacob Wilson, I think, is that X factor. And this team's going to be fun to watch, though. This is
yes,
not like oh, the A's are in town. Like, what the hell are we going to watch that for? There's some fun, young intrigue to this team, and especially when they get Muncy up there, who I think's undervalued as well.
yeah.
You can really like what they've got going on. And hopefully Zach Geloff can bounce back as well, or he's good with the glove, and he can run into him. So that's another guy that I think could be a quote unquote X factor, but he's just even a good Geloff doesn't have the impact of what a good Wilson could have.
Yeah, makes sense. Last team that we got to go over is the LA Angels, and I promise this is going to be the quickest one. Mike Trout's healthy. Mike Trout homered in spring training. That's awesome. Tim Anderson hit a pull side home run. That was sick. That was great to
I'm
see.
rooting for him.
I'm rooting hard for him. The projected lineup as it stands right now: Logan O'Hoppe, Travis d'Arnaud as the catchers. Jorge Soler is the DH. Shawnuel at first, Rengifo at second, TA at short with Neto working back from an offseason surgery. He had shoulder surgery in early November. And then you've got Johan Moncada at third base. White Sox Hive, stand up. Taylor Ward in left, Joe Adele in center / Mickey Moniak. And then you got Trout in right. Kevin Newman and Moniak are on the bench, along with likely J.D. Davis. They paid Yusei Kikuchi. Kikuchi, Jose Soriano, Tyler Anderson, Kyle Hendricks, and Reed Detmers. They also paid Kenley Jansen. Kenley, Ben Joyce, Brock Burke, Ryan Zefferjan, Jose Quijada, Hans Kraus are the bullpen. Like, it's not the worst team in the world on paper. It really isn't.
No, it's just like it's just
You
it's
know
all
things
like
are
the
going to
same
go
kinds of
wrong.
moves.
That's the Angel dilemma.
Just like do something different than just like adding a bunch of the same guys. Like I
Yeah.
don't know.
Here's Yusei Kikuchi and Kenley Jansen. It's
Like
like, all right.
it's so predictable.
Yeah.
We knew they were gonna add like a Yoan Moncada type. Anybody from that 2018 or whatever the exact year would be 2017, 2018,
I think it was the
2019
2017 Top 100. Yeah.
Baseball America Top 100. Come on down.
Yeah.
Of course they got Scott Kingery. Um, it is better for sure. And a healthy Mike Trout, which is the X factor, no matter what, even though that's low hanging fruit as well. And a healthy Taylor Ward, like and obviously Shanwell taking a step forward would be nice, and O'Hoppe being available. Like this team was ravaged by injury. Like him being available for the entirety of the season, you can see it being better. The rotation is not a black hole anymore, right? If Tyler Anderson is back to what he is kind of settled in at. 3.81 last year. If he duplicates that, you feel great. It's Reed Detmers, I think, as a big aspect of this thing as well. If Reed Detmers is back to the mid to high threes guy, and then whatever you get from Kyle Hendricks, this rotation is not bad. I just I don't know what the identity of this team is, and I know that that's a little bit of eyewash in baseball compared to like basketball or football, where you probably need an
Sure.
identity, quote unquote. More the identity is more just for the takeaway, right? Like what does this team excel at? Like what is this team's edge other than Mike Trout, who isn't available? I don't really know what the edge is for this team, I think you could argue, like, what's their strength? Is it the power potentially?
Uh, Other than having Mike Trout, like I was going to say, the
Because there's
strength of
not
the
that much
team is Mike
power
Trout.
outside of Trout. It's that you get Ward who can hit you 20. It's Soler. I mean, Go Hoppy can run into some home runs. Like, I don't, yeah, what is it? And again, they're not bad. It's just like, I don't know. It's like when I sim the offseason in MLB The Show and I have a bunch of open spots, they're going to just fill it and sign random players. And it just kind of feels like that. You don't feel like they like
Yeah.
specifically addressed anything. They just added whatever players they could. And I, I don't know. It's really difficult for me to figure out what this team really is other than 75 wins again. Like, how do they get more than that? Or how do they get worse than that? I don't really know. I think they're just destined for mid 70s.
I think you can enjoy the watch offensively. Like that is the edge for me, but there's no edge as it pertains to winning baseball games. But a lineup with Mike Trout is going to make me want to watch. And the fact that like the fact that Neto will exist in that, and
Yeah.
Ohapi will exist in that, and Soler can run into baseballs, and I am kind of intrigued in Shonawell's development as a first baseman and as an offensive profile in general, and I'm rooting hard for Tim Anderson, and I want to
Hmm.
see Joe Adell because the good looks really good with Joe Adell. It's that element that I feel like is the redeeming quality of the LA Angels, where they are going to be an interesting watch for
You
half the game.
you can talk yourself into the offense, I guess, right? Like where Renjifo's no slouch with the bat, and then Christian Moore is going to get up there at some point, and
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
may struggle with swing and miss. He also could hit 20 plus bombs and go crazy. So,
Yeah.
it,
And I could
a net,
also, yeah.
I was just gonna say Neto and Moore being added to this lineup, you could start to get excited about the offensive ability a little bit, especially with Darno as a bench bat platoon guy as well.
And I think you can get excited about the eighth and ninth inning with Joyce and Kenley Jansen. Like I do think if they have a lead in the seventh and I'm scanning MLB TV, I'm probably going to turn on the Angels because I do want to see Joyce throwing 105 and then two Kenley Jansen because Kenley has earned my viewing pleasure.
Absolutely. No, yeah, so important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations. He's gonna be close to what, setting the saves record, and that then he'll really have earned
Yeah,
your
sure, but
viewing
it's
pleasure.
like you know what I mean. It's
No,
it's
I know.
Kenley Jansen, man. Like
I know.
there's some gravity to his name, and I understand that he's
Absolutely.
getting
Well,
older, but
I love watching closers chase numbers too, like
yeah, sure,
chase those records, and I mean, I think that's a big reason why the Angels signed him. It's just like some positive PR to something to follow early in the year. But
sure.
um, yeah, I mean, it's got to be the offense, the offensive ability potentially. One other thing on the Angels, have they ever like publicly commented on their strategy of just skipping the minor leagues? Because like I just wonder, do they have like some theories to back this? Because we're just assuming that they're going to fast track Christian Moore as well, right? Like they did with
Yeah,
Shanwell and Neto and everything. Like 29 other teams don't do that. Like I know the Padres will push guys kind of quickly or whatever, but nobody else does this, and they've never really, as far as I've seen, they've never really explained why they do it, other than the owner being impatient. Um, that's just a total aside. I don't know if they ever have addressed it directly, but I just always wonder why we've just accepted. Oh yeah, this thing that nobody else does. Yeah, the Angels do that, and there's not really any proof or concept that it necessarily works.
I'm not seeing anything. I just Googled Angels fast track minor leaguers, and
I just
I don't see
okay. Yeah,
I
it's
don't
just
see a
okay
single
doing
quote.
crazy stuff. Um, on that point though, probably see Christian Moore there quickly. Probably see Dana up there at some point again, but he was rushed, obviously.
Probably see
Uh,
Klassen get rushed.
at some point, I wouldn't be shocked if they rush him to the bullpen. But the guy that I think could be a big asset to their bullpen, we've talked about, is Sammy Natera. But they have
Yeah.
so many lefties that they just go all lefty bullpen, like outside of the eighth and ninth inning guys. It's interesting. What other than Mike Trout, who's the X factor for you on this team?
Is there one? I don't know.
Detmers, I think, for me.
Probably Detmers. I'm also thinking Jose Soriano. Like Soriano's biggest competition is Jose Soriano. That opponents do not barrel up Jose Soriano, and they strike out a lot. And if he's not walking the world, Soriano, I think, can actually be an upper level mid rotation arm,
Yeah.
and that's a big one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least Soriano's going to be a big league arm, like in a rotation piece. Like Detmers, we know how talented he is, and
Yeah,
he shouldn't have ever gone back to AAA like that. But he did have a 6.70 ERA in the
no, he
big
did
leagues.
struggle a lot. Yeah,
Yeah. So if he's if he's a high threes and Hendricks is just anything below a five, you could argue that the rotation all of a sudden is a strength, not because it's dominant, but because everybody 1 through 5 is giving you a shot to win every fifth day.
yeah. I will say Kyle Hendricks is projected to be a 5.1 ERA and K 6 hitters per 9.
Yeah, that's not great.
Tough heat. All right. I want to wrap on predicted order of finish. Okay. I just want you to give me 1 through 5, and you can provide reasoning if you want. It's also a prediction, and you could have zero reasoning. I just want to hear where you stand right now as we go into the 25 season.
So I was at the well, you were there too. You helped procure tickets for us, so I appreciate that. I was going to say I was at the Nationals Astros spring training ballpark to watch Marlins Nats,
Yeah.
and walking in the outfield area, you just see all of the banners:
Yeah.
division winner, uh, AL championship winner, division winner, World Series winner, AL championship winner, on and on and on. The Houston Astros, like, I know that they really were that dynasty and have been consistently solid, but it just seems like this organization's just always going to be in the upper 80s
Yeah.
in wins, maybe 90. And even with losing Tucker and Bregman, I think they've done enough to match that number of 88 wins again, which was comfortably enough. It was 3.5 games above the Mariners last year. I think the Rangers could do it, but when we talk about that rotation, there's just so much more variance there. The Astros, I think, have a lower ceiling than maybe even the Mariners and the Rangers. But the Astros floor ceiling to me is like 84 wins or
Yeah.
90 wins or 89 wins. Like they're going to be right around there. And I think in a volatile, weird division with the Rangers having their own question marks and volatility, we talked about them being one of the most volatile teams in baseball. The Mariners, yes, the rotation gives them a almost guarantee to win 80 games, but we see them continue to be stretched to be able to get past that.
Yeah.
I got to go Astros number 1 again, and just it's just what I expect. And if they need to make a move, they'll make it. Cam Smith could end up getting up there at some point at the end of the year, and it wouldn't shock me. Like they've got enough going for them right now, I think.
Okay. So I actually buy the ceiling of the Texas Rangers, and I understand the rotation questions, but at the end of the day, it's also Tyler Mahle and John Gray. And would we be surprised if they threw to a 3-7?
No,
Like it's Tyler
no,
Mahle and John Gray. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying if Tyler Mahle and John Gray throw like they are $10 million pitchers, that lineup could be the best in baseball. Like Arizona had the best
yeah,
offense in baseball last year by team OPS.
yeah.
Why can't Texas be that this year? They were that in 2023. Like,
I'm with you. Like I've probably will put $15 on BetMGM to like for the Rangers to win the World Series because I think they can do it. But you do have to hit a parlay of sorts with your starting pitchers because in addition to what you just
sure.
said, you also need Eovaldi to continue to evade father time,
Yeah.
and be like the outlier of double TJ guys. And then you
I'm
need,
kind of done doubting Uvalde, to be
I
honest.
get it, I get
Yeah.
it. And then DeGrom, which I don't need to tell you about that. So I'm with you. Like they're my number 2 in this division without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I think there's just enough of the question marks where I'm like, I don't know if I can go with them to win the division, though they could end up running away with it with
Yeah.
their ceiling, as you alluded to.
They were a wild card team in 2023. And I think in 24, they got a lot of answers in terms of, hey, Langford fills out part of this lineup. And we have a deficiency with our catcher. Let's go get Higashioka to back him up. So
Yeah.
I feel like they almost took 24 as a reset year, and they can look at this as like, let's go win a division. Because even in the year that we won it all, we did not win our division. I have Texas 1, I have Houston 2, and I think we're aligned on Seattle 3.
Yeah. And the last note on that, they're going to be aggressive, the Rangers, too. Maybe
Yeah.
as aggressive as anybody. And they've got the farm. You mentioned they're not going to trade Teodo. but Winston Santos, plenty of teams would have interest in.
Yeah.
They have several other pitching prospects that they could move. Foscue is still a guy that you can dangle. Like they
Yeah.
could absolutely make a move at some point to just continue to bolster that pitching situation in general. But yeah, the Mariners are three, and I do think this is a division that can send three teams to the playoffs, especially because I do think the AL East could be a little bit more diminished this year. Like I wouldn't be shocked if the Mariners finish ahead of the Rays or the Orioles. I know we're being a little bit hard on the Orioles all of a sudden. I wouldn't be shocked if the Yankees regress significantly this
Yeah.
year. Like nothing would surprise me there. I think the American League's going to be very wide open. So I think the Mariners are third, but I feel a lot better about the Mariners this year than I did last year at the end because I do think that they're going to figure some things out, and it doesn't need to be huge, right? It just needs to be three more wins,
Yeah.
and you're making the playoffs.
To be honest, I feel the exact same about Seattle as I did at the end of the year last year. And is Julio going to get better than the 3.8 WAR? I think so.
Yes.
But is the rest of the offense still going to be underwhelming? I don't know. Like I'm excited to get clarity on that, but I'm a bit more pessimistic about Seattle's offense than I think you are. 4-5 is an interesting one to me because I do like the A's lineup more
Mhm.
than the Angels, but that pitching staff stinks in Sacramento. I
I'm
think I go Angels 4.
ooh, I'm gonna go A's for. I think they're gonna hit, and I think they'll survive somehow pitching wise. It's not gonna be good,
It's
but it's
really
not gonna
not
be.
good.
No, it's very not good. I think the young guys are gonna get up. Gunnar Hoglund, I do think is gonna get them some innings. It's better than it was last year for sure. They have like able bodies. There was points
Yeah.
where you look 1 through 5 in that rotation last year. It's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like so. I think they're gonna have a lot of high scoring ball games. But I like them better than the Angels. I just I think the Angels are gonna limp to 70
I
again. I
just
actually think the Athletics are gonna win 75 games or so this year. I think this is gonna be one of the more enjoyable seasons they've had in a few years.
I'm just begging for Trout to be healthy across a full
Yeah.
year. Like I want to see a lineup with Trout, Neto, Ohapi, and Shotwell and Christian Moore, like all kind of firing on all cylinders. That would be fun.
Yeah. That
But
would be amazing.
so what we got, every link you need is in the episode description. And Peter and I will be back to talk American League Central with you on Wednesday. Enjoy, guys.